Giants fans, welcome back to another episode of Only a Giant. Excited to be here. Obviously, at this point, we're here to talk about the Giants, presumably, and if you're still here, still listening, still struggling through this Giant season and still willing to listen uh, to me talk, then thanks so much for being here. I'm your host, obviously, Michael Doherty. Thanks so much. Um, and yeah, we're here to kind of try to wrap up the season as quickly as we can. I think at this point, most Giants fans at this point have probably given up on the season and mostly rooting for losses. And I don't want to say I'm not there, but I kind of am there as well. Obviously, it's getting close to the point at this point with this regime, even with Brian Dable, with Joe Shane, that um, probably time to hit the reset button again, unfortunately. And I'm going to throw this up here. Just got a rep home team here, Syracuse Orange. Got to see Cam Ward up close and personal, battling against Kyle McCord, Syracuse quarterback, who kind of outdueled Cam Ward in that game. We'll talk about that real quick before we get into the Giants and the preview against the Saints here. But let's talk about that a little bit first because I think that is more relevant at this point to what Giants fans want to hear about. And kind of watching that game, I guess the first thing I will say is Kyle McCord did kind of outplay Cam Ward. Now, do I think he's a better prospect? Do I think he's a better quarterback? Yeah, no, probably not. To be honest with you, but uh, is Kyle McCord somebody that I take a swing at? Absolutely. Third round. I don't know where his projections will be at this point. I think he'll be at the Senior Bowl. Maybe his stock rises a little bit and he sneaks into the second. I don't think he's a first round quarterback, and that's just my opinion on that. Obviously, we'll see what the NFL thinks as we get closer to the Senior Bowl and then into draft season. A lot will change, I'm sure, at that point. But looking at the game itself, obviously Syracuse won, but I don't think it was anything that Cam Ward did wrong. I think Cam Ward made the throws that he had to make when he had to make them. He made the right decision a lot of times. He uh, had a pass that was dropped, a big fumble as well that was returned for a touchdown, and then some untimely penalties certainly didn't help. And then at the end of the game, they kicked a field goal, and they probably should have went for it on fourth down when they clearly were not stopping Syracuse. So probably something at that point where I think Cam Ward did everything he was able to do in that game, and he looked good doing it. Now Kyle McCord, gunslinger, threw the ball all over the yard. Made some tight window throws, made some good throws, made some bad throws mixed in there. And I think that's where you kind of see the flaws in his game. But certainly someone that will be intriguing in this upcoming draft at the quarterback position. If for some reason they don't go quarterback early, or maybe even they want to take a swing on another quarterback, kind of like the Redskins did back in the day with Kirk Cousins, maybe just to protect themselves a little bit. So the Cam Ward Bowl, whatever you want to call it, Kyle McCord Bowl was a blast to watch. If you didn't catch it, go check out the stats from that game. It was kind of crazy, up and down game, back and forth, all the way to the very end. Was a very fascinating game to watch. All right, I guess let's get back into the reason you're actually here, potentially, and that's to talk about the New York Giants. 2-10 New York Giants playing the 4-8 New Orleans Saints. Not a pretty game for anyone really at this point. But I guess let's start off with talking about the Saints and their roster right now. They're getting a little healthier, I guess. They have Derek Carr back. Alvin Kamara's there. Wide receivers are pretty skim at this point with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kevin Austin Jr., and Cedric Wilson being their primary wide receivers. Tight ends, Juwan Johnson, who's been there for a little while, he's questionable. Offensive line, Talisa Fuaga, Nick Saldiveri, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and Trevor Panning. Offensive line that I'm not sure how they're doing specifically as far as stats are concerned this year, but some names mixed in there with Eric McCoy, with Cesar Ruiz, and Trevor Penning, who I know at one point was having a pretty rough season. Talisa Fuaga as well as a rookie. Kind of interesting seeing him there at left tackle. As far as their defense is concerned, Cam Jordan, always a stud up front. Nathan Shepard, Kalen Saunders, who was a rookie a few years ago, someone I really liked coming out of that draft. Obviously, we didn't get him. Carl Granderson, Chase Young mixing in there, along with Peyton Turner as well, backing up. Pete Werner, Demario Davis, Willie Gay, as far as your linebackers are concerned. And then a corner that we really liked, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Will Harris as a safety, Tyrann Mathieu as a safety, and Alante Taylor as a cornerback, and Ugo Amadi as a nickelback. Now, as far as the stats for the Saints, I mean, you look at your main things. Obviously, your quarterback, Derek Carr, played 9 games this year, 1,900 yards, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So he's actually having a pretty good year. But he actually obviously missed some games as well. Spencer Rattler started a few games. Jake Haener played a little bit as well. But that, Derek Carr is obviously the main guy to kind of talk about there. Rushing the ball, and this is where I worry that they'll absolutely destroy the Giants. Alvin Kamara, 206 carries on the year, 894 yards with 6 touchdowns. Taysom Hill mixes in a lot with 6 touchdowns. Obviously, he's hurt, I believe, at this point. I could be wrong on that, but I thought he was. Jamal Williams as well as there. Derek Carr does run a little bit, but not really a known running quarterback. Reception-wise, another spot where I worry the Giants will get killed. Alvin Kamara also gets a lot of receptions. He has 59 receptions on the year for 450 yards. Olave's out for the year. Rashid Shaheed's there. Juwan Johnson, obviously. So they have some weapons here, but not a lot of sexiness, I guess, if you will, with this team. And really, if you look at the team itself, it's probably going to be just a run heavy game, if I had to guess here, with Alvin Kamara, kind of taking over the game, which I think he certainly has the capability of doing. The Saints offense is actually ranked 14th in the NFL with 23 points per game, 12th in the NFL with yards per game with 345.7 yards per game. So definitely a decent team offensively, which is way better than the Giants can say. Rushing wise, with this team, they are ranked 9th in the NFL with 4.6 yards per carry, 28.6 rushes per game, and 1.2 rushing touchdowns per game as well, which is ranked 6th in the NFL. So definitely a team that's going to try to run all over the place. When Derek Carr's in there, the passing game is much better. So these stats, I think, are even a little bit skewed with the fact that he missed a decent amount of time, but they're averaging 7.1 yards per passing play, which is 18th in the league. 213 yards per game in the passing game, which is ranked 19th in the league. And the sack rate is actually only 5.71%, which is ranked 7th in the NFL. So I think some of those numbers are skewed without having Derek Carr available. Obviously, the passing game struggled a lot with the other quarterbacks in the game. And it's much better with Derek Carr. Defensively for the Saints, and they're not bad, not great, I would say. 19th in the league for points per game, 23.4 points is what they're giving up. But the yardage, they're giving up 385 yards per game, which is ranked 30th in the NFL, which is obviously not great. Rush defense, they're giving up 5.1 yards per carry, which is definitely one of the worst in the league. We're the worst. But the rushes per game is where they're not as bad. 26.9 rushes per game, which is ranked 15th in the NFL. As far as the pass play defense, not great. 7.6 yards per pass, which is ranked 28th in the NFL. Giving up over 250 yards per game in the passing game, which is ranked 29th in the NFL. So a team that's kind of similar to the Giants on a lot of fronts, where defensively giving up rushing, giving up the rushing side of it, giving up the passing side of it, really just nothing kind of good going on defensively. But offensively, I think is what really kind of separates the two teams. Obviously, having Derek Carr back certainly helps. So I think they'll be able to throw the ball all over us, probably run the ball all over us. Obviously, Giants at this point, if you look at the injury report, Dexter Lawrence out, Kayvon's back, but Bobby Okereke may not play, Raheem Nunez-Roches may not play, Deontay Banks may not play. Just a injury-riddled team at this point for the Giants. Malik Neighbors just got put on the injury reserve again for Friday with a hip flexor. Did not practice today. He may not play in the game. He's not ruled out, but something to kind of worry about, and that's like the lone bright spot that we have in this offense. Other than, I guess, Tyrone Tracy, which I don't want to say that he's not a bright spot because he is, but man, if you take out Malik Neighbors, what do you kind of do offensively at that point? It kind of gets even uglier than it already is. So that's just some basic overall stats that I kind of wanted to get through, and then we'll kind of jump into the Giants itself. So Giants offensively, Drew Lock as a quarterback, uh, kind of held onto the ball a lot from what we saw last week or whenever we played last year. Uh, Hung onto the ball a lot. Had some sacks that probably really weren't needed if he had gotten rid of the ball. Some fumbles, some turnovers. And we're going to see it again on Sunday. I think this is a defense that'll probably be able to get after the Giants. So uh, try to run the ball. Try to run the ball. And I feel like beating a dead horse at this point with saying this, but you need to get Tyrone Tracy 20 carries. You need to get Devin Singletary 15 carries. Something like that. Really commit to the run in this game and try to control the game. I say that, and I don't think the Giants ever actually do that, even though it makes sense with this team, but it's just something they just don't seem to do. So that would be my game plan with the Giants here. No Theo Johnson, he's on IR now as well. Maybe we'll see some Greg Dulcich. Maybe we'll get the other tight end there for the Giants as well. Bellinger to play a little bit, maybe contribute. Manhurts is obviously always around, but he's more of that run blocking tight end. So try to establish a run here, get through this game. Don't let it get ugly would be kind of my main thing that I would say with this game. And get out of there and survive for another week. If it's not an ugly game, I think Brian Dable hangs on a little bit longer here. I don't think we fire him mid-season, but man, I don't know how you get through this season and not strongly consider firing him, even though I know Mara said that he wasn't planning on it. So who knows there. In the passing game, I'd like to see them take some shots. Give Jalen Hyatt a few shots deep. What do you have to lose at this point, other than I guess maybe making this an ugly game? But I'm not saying to throw the ball deep every time, but have 2 or 3, maybe 4 attempts downfield, more than 20 yards. I think would really be beneficial in this game. Beneficial for the offense, beneficial for the Giants wide receivers. Whoever is getting those targets, I think would benefit from that. So that's what I want to see offensively. I think against this team, they're probably going to get some pressure against Drew Lock and probably force some bad throws, errant throws, and probably force some sacks that we're going to be like, wow, why are you holding on to the ball so long, Drew Lock? I just kind of assume that's going to happen because it's happened with this offense too. And maybe this is a little bit of a different topic, but there's no ingenuity in this offense. There's no surprise. There's no intrigue with this offense. It's so bland, so boring. And I don't know how you go from the previous few years with Mike Kafka being the OC, and there was at least a little bit of surprise, a little bit of taking a run play and working off that same formation and making it a pass play. It just seems like there's none of that now, and this offense is just so vanilla, so bland. I really, and I said this, I believe I said this last week, I really wish that the Giants would, or Brian Dable would kind of give up play calling and just let Kafka have a go at it here for the rest of the year. And I know that won't happen, but something that I probably wish would happen, because I think it's clear that Dable, maybe it's just this offense, and maybe it's the talent that we have right now. Maybe that's really all it is, but it's just not working. And sometimes you need to change it up a little bit. Defensively, I think the biggest thing that everyone's going to be looking at here is just the watching Deontay Johnson if he does play. I think he's going to play. I think from what I'm hearing, Bobby Okereke probably isn't going to play. So I really do kind of want to see what he has. He was somebody that I was really excited about in the preseason and in the training camp. Seemed like a stud. And then he got hurt. And it was unfortunate at the time. And I think, I guess it kind of is what it is here, but just something that I hope that we see a little bit of him, and maybe we see a spark with this team with that. But defensively, obviously we have corners down. My assumption here is Adoree and Cordell Flott will start. I don't know. There may be some other guys mixed in, obviously, as well. You have Kayvon still there. You have Brian Burns still there. Up the middle here, DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley, maybe Chapman mixed in with some other guys probably as well. just such a like, man, who's even on this team anymore is kind of how it feels. Aziz Ojolari suspended. Um, just a big kind of pile of mess with this Giants team, and really at this point, I'm sure I'm not the only one. It's kind of like counting down just to get this season over with, get the pain over with, um, figure out what we're doing, whether we're keeping Brian Dable here and Joe Shane or moving on from them. Um, if I was making that decision, I'm moving on, man. I hate to say it, I do like Brian Dable. I'd love to see him get a chance with a quarterback, but man, it's just so ugly right now with this, and I don't necessarily have faith that he'd be able to turn it around at this point. I haven't seen it. Have you? Is there anything that has really shown promise here? Uh, and I understand, we have a lot of injuries. Andrew Thomas out, Evan Neal now out, Illuminor possibly out, Hubbard possibly out. Like just the injuries have just been insane with this. But I don't know. I don't know if he can salvage this and recover it. To be honest with you, I just don't know. Um, if it was up to me, I think we'd fire him and move on and maybe go after Mike Vrabel, maybe go after Belichick if he doesn't go to UNC. Maybe get Ben Johnson. Obviously, that would probably be like your number one pick. But he has to want to come here. From what I've heard, he's going to be kind of choosy as to where he actually goes. And I don't blame him for that. So I don't blame Ben Johnson for doing that. But I think you have to at least explore those options and see. It's easy to say that you're going to be picky as to where you go, but also when you have a top one, top two, top three pick, I certainly think that makes the destination way more intriguing. Now you could say the same thing about Washington last year having the number two pick, but also I think from what I heard there was some clashes with ownership as well where they seem to know it all, being basketball guys, and kind of have an idea of what they wanted to do. And Ben Johnson didn't seem to like that. Didn't seem to kind of gel with them. So I think there was a little bit more involved there rather than just your normal interview and like, dislike, whatever. I think if that had gone better, maybe he would have stayed with Washington and had been their head coach at this point. Although, if I was a Washington fan right now, would you really complain about their current situation? Probably not. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. What else, guys? Thanks so much for joining me on this. I know, if you're here, you're probably a diehard at this point. Nobody really wants to talk too much about the Giants at this point. Even the national media at this point is kind of like, oh man, can we skip these segments? Can we get them off Thanksgiving? Which didn't work. But really just a overall around ugly, 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 ugly season this year. Only saving grace in New York, I would say, is the fact that the Jets have been just as bad, if not worse. More of a clown show over there with the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, with firing Saleh, getting rid of their GM. Just such a crazy mess over there right now at this point. Last thing I want to get to here, and then we'll kind of move on here, is the prediction for this game. So my prediction for this game against the New Orleans Saints, 31-7. I don't think this is going to be a close game. I think the Giants are too beat up and too bad at this point to even think that this would be a competitive game. I don't see it. I don't think it's going to be competitive. So 31-7. I think it's going to be kind of an embarrassing loss if they stick to the run here and grind out. And we can't do anything on offense, which I don't anticipate we're able to do. It's going to get ugly quick, and it's just going to continue to get uglier and uglier and uglier in this game. Does Brian Dable get fired after this game? Probably not. I don't think we're quite there yet. Like I said, I think he'll make it to the end of the season, and then they'll make a decision. If I had to guess, the Giants would keep him, though. That's all I got today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. This was kind of light, I guess, if you will, here, because quite honestly, I don't think anyone really wants to, get too deep into this at this point. We're 2-10. We're looking horrible. The season's over. We're eliminated from playoffs. We're fighting for that number one overall pick at this point. And I'd rather talk about Cam Ward and Kyle McCord and rookies coming up and stuff of that nature. Or we'll talk about Syracuse. Hey, if anyone ever wants to talk about Syracuse, I'm always down for that. Season's over for Syracuse. Obviously, they finished 9-3, but we'll see what the bowl game brings and what happens to Kyle McCord. That's what I'm excited to see. So that's all I got today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. If you could please like and subscribe, and let's hope for some better days as Giants fans. That's all I got. Let's freaking go, guys. See ya.
My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even the score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. We're down right now, but did it before.